At my son's funeral, his wife threw me out of my own house. I'm Eleanor Mitchell. What happened next changed everything. If this story hits home, subscribe. More stories like this every week. Picture this. Your child just died. You're grieving. And your daughter-in-law looks you in the eye and says, "Stop crying. Pack your bags and get out of my house." She called me a worthless burden in front of everyone at my son's funeral. But here's what Victoria didn't know. The house she was kicking me out of, I built it in 1987. The $850,000 she thought she'd inherited was always mine. For 8 years, she'd lived off my generosity while treating me like charity. Instead of arguing, I walked away. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response there is. The signs were there from the beginning. I just chose to ignore them. When my son David died in a car accident 2 months earlier, Victoria immediately took charge of everything. The funeral arrangements, the flowers, even the music. When I suggested David's favorite song, the one we'd played while building this house together in 1987, she cut me off. "That's too depressing. We need something uplifting." I watched her command the room in her expensive black dress while I sat in my old gray suit, the one I'd worn to my husband's funeral 2 years earlier, feeling invisible. At the reception, in my own kitchen, she pulled me aside. "Tom, Eleanor, we need to talk about your situation. You're financially dependent on us now. David was supporting you, and with him gone, I can't carry that burden." Burden. That word hit harder than I expected. This house is mine now. Everything is mine. David left it all to me. I nodded slowly. She read that nod as defeat. What she didn't see was calculation. She had no idea David had never owned this house. He'd lived here, grown up here, but owned it, never. She also had no idea about the filing cabinet in my basement, 4 drawers of meticulously organized financial records going back 40 years. And most importantly, she had no idea about the trust. The funeral guests saw what Victoria wanted them to see: a successful real estate agent taking charge during a family crisis, and a helpless old woman who couldn't manage her own affairs. "Tom's having a hard time adjusting," I heard her tell our neighbor Helen. "The poor thing doesn't understand finances. David handled everything for her." Even Helen, who'd known me 37 years, seemed to believe it. That's when I understood. People see what they expect to see. Victoria expected a helpless widow, so that's what she saw in my old Honda, my simple clothes, my quiet grief. She mistook humility for helplessness. As the last guests left that Tuesday evening, Victoria cornered me by the front door. "I meant what I said. This arrangement isn't working anymore." I looked around the living room I'd painted 3 times over the decades, the hardwood floors I'd installed by hand. "I understand," I said quietly. She had no idea what I understood, or what was coming. Wednesday morning, over coffee at the kitchen table, my late husband Margaret and I had bought at a garage sale in 1986. I made a list, not of what I was losing, but of what Victoria thought she was gaining. The house, $420,000 by her own real estate estimate. The life insurance, $150,000, which she'd already started spending in her head. My dignity, watching her parade around like she'd inherited a kingdom when she'd actually inherited nothing. But what really bothered me was the erasure. She'd already boxed up my late husband's photos from the mantel, taken down David's childhood drawings, removed my old CPA certificates from the den wall. "I'm redecorating," she explained. "David always said this place needed updating." She gave me 30 days, handed me a printed timeline like I was a tenant being evicted, circled November 15th in red, and handed me brochures for a senior facility at $800 a month. "What about food, transportation, medical bills?" I asked. She shrugged. "There are programs for people in your situation. The government, like I'd never contributed a dime to society in my life." That's when I realized she didn't just want me gone. She wanted me grateful for the chance to leave. But Wednesday morning, sitting with my coffee, I had a different realization. Victoria had made one critical assumption, that David owned everything she was claiming. She'd been married to him 8 years and had probably never once seen a deed or a mortgage statement. Why would she? David handled the day-to-day just like I'd taught him. But the money, the property, the investments, those had always been mine to manage. She saw his helpfulness and assumed dependency. She saw my quiet grief and assumed defeat. If I said nothing, if I just packed my bags and shuffled off, what message would that send? That bullies win. That volume beats truth. That respect is optional when you're dealing with an old woman. The stakes weren't just financial. They were existential. But I had something Victoria didn't know about. I just needed the right moment to use it. Thursday morning, Victoria let herself into my house with David's key. No knock, manila folder under her arm. We need to talk about your finances. I need to understand exactly what David was covering for you. Is that what David told you? I asked. He didn't have to tell me. It's obvious. How else could you afford to live here? You've never seen the deed, I said. Her confidence flickered. I don't need to. David inherited this house when your husband died. Did he? I stood, rinsed my coffee cup slowly. I built this house in 1987, paid cash for the lot, supervised every day of construction. That was 37 years ago. Things change. Some things. Not ownership. I asked her plainly. In 8 years, had David ever shown her a mortgage statement? Had she ever seen him write a check for property taxes? Her silence answered for her. Here's what I think happened, I said. David helped me around the house, and you assumed that meant he was supporting me financially. Fine. Show me the deed. I don't have to prove anything to you. Yes, you do. I'm David's widow. Stop making assumptions. She left with a final warning, November 15th, or she'd change the locks. I smiled and started loading the dishwasher. Some conversations are better finished with lawyers present. Friday afternoon, I went down to my basement sanctuary. 4 drawers, decades of meticulous records. My late husband used to joke I was a squirrel storing acorns. I pulled the folder. 447 Maple Street, the original land purchase, March 1987, my name alone. The construction contract, $78,000. The recorded deed. Sole owner, no cosigner, no mortgage. Property tax receipts, insurance policies, utility agreements, every year, every decade, all in my name. David appeared nowhere in any of it. In the very back, a folder labeled Trust Documents, Private. The Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust, established 1985, before David was even born. Current balance, $853,412. David listed as a lifetime beneficiary. Never an owner, never a trustee. Every dollar of comfort he'd ever had, his education, his wedding, his opportunities, had flowed from that trust, under my control the entire time. Victoria had seen David's comfortable life and assumed independent wealth. She never imagined the money moving from David to me was actually my own money flowing back home. And there, at the bottom of the folder, David's life insurance policy, $150,000. Beneficiary listed not as Victoria, but as the trust, which meant me. She'd been planning a future built entirely on money that was never hers. I closed the cabinet and thought about timing. Today was November 1st, 2 weeks left on her deadline. I could correct her right now, or I could let her keep digging. Sunday morning brought the worst of it. I was dressing for church when Victoria arrived with 3 real estate agent friends for what she called a consultation on the house's potential. I heard them through the door. Incredible bones, but the decor is so dated. Tom built this place, but she has no eye for modern design. They walked through my home, cataloging my life's work like a garage sale. Tom will be transitioning to a more suitable living situation soon, so I'll have full control over renovations. Full control over the kitchen my late husband and I had planned together for 6 months. I came downstairs in my church clothes. Victoria introduced me like a curiosity. the original owner, transitioning. One of the agents asked kindly about my life's work. Victoria, wanting an audience for my supposed decline, asked me to describe maintenance problems that didn't exist. A roof leak that never happened, a furnace that was 2 years old. When I calmly corrected her, she doubled down in front of everyone. The point is, you're a 70-year-old woman on a fixed income who can't handle a 400-square-foot house anymore. You've been living off David's generosity for 2 years, and now you need to face reality. I asked her, calmly, whether she'd ever actually seen him write those checks. She hadn't. She couldn't answer a single specific question. The agents were edging toward the door. "You're throwing me out," I said. "I'm giving you a month. That's more generous than most people would be." "Generous," I repeated. "This house? David inherited it from your husband, and now I inherit it from David. That's how inheritance works." I nodded slowly. "I see." "Victoria, you might want to check your facts before making statements like that in front of witnesses." I turned to the agents. "You might want to ask her to show you the deed before you plan any renovations." Her face went white. "Enjoy your tour," I said, and left for church. I had a lawyer to call. Monday morning, I sat across from my attorney, Margaret Collins, 3 folders on her desk between us, the deed, 37 years of tax and insurance records, and the trust. "Current balance $853,412, she confirmed. Victoria had no idea. None. And David never explained the trust structure to her. Margaret shook her head. "So Victoria assumed David was supporting you instead of the other way around." "The irony is beautiful," I said. "She's been threatening to kick me out of my own house using my own money. I laid out what I wanted." The insurance claim processed immediately to the trust. Formal tenant notice served to Victoria. Complete documentation so she couldn't claim ignorance. And witnesses present. The same real estate agents who'd heard her call me a burden. "That feels like public humiliation," Margaret said. "No. Public humiliation is what she did to me. This is public education. She spent 2 months telling people I was a broke old woman living off family charity. They deserve the truth, and she deserves to hear it in front of the same people she lied to." Margaret agreed to have everything ready the next morning. Tuesday, Margaret and I walked into Premier Realty. Victoria was mid-showing with a young couple. Her face shifted from professional smile to alarm. "We need to discuss urgent legal matters regarding your late husband's estate," Margaret said. The couple left within minutes. Around the office, other agents pretended not to listen. Margaret laid the deed on Victoria's desk. 447 Maple Street is owned by Eleanor Mitchell. Purchased 1987. No co-signers, no mortgage. Victoria's face drained white. "That's impossible. David inherited this house." "Your husband owned no property," Victoria. Then the tax records, 37 years, all in my name. Then the trust. $853,412. David, a lifetime beneficiary, never an owner. Then the life insurance, beneficiary the trust. "That money is mine," Victoria said. "That money belongs to Eleanor." The office was completely silent. "You have 30 days, Margaret said. The same timeline you gave her. "Where will I go?" "That's not her concern anymore. You're a capable adult with a career." Victoria looked at me with something I'd never seen from her before. Respect. "I'm sorry. I made assumptions." "Yes, you did. Can we work something out?" "Respect isn't negotiable, Victoria. It never was. I understand that now." "Good. That's the first step toward earning it back." As we left, she called after me, asking what happens now. "Now you learn what I've always known," I said. "Quiet people aren't weak people. We're just selective about when we use our voices." By Thursday, the story had spread through the local real estate community. My neighbor Helen brought me coffee and gossip. Victoria shopping the clearance aisle alone, her broker calling a meeting, 3 clients requesting new agents because if she couldn't figure out who owned a house she'd lived in for 8 years, how could she be trusted with theirs? A young couple had even posted about dodging a bullet with hundreds of likes. Friday brought Margaret Collins with an update. Victoria's attorney had called, offering to pay $2,000 a month to stay 6 months instead of leaving in 30 days. Market rent on a $420,000 house was closer to $3,500. Tell him we'd consider reasonable offers, I said. Full market rate, first and last month plus deposit, over $10,000 up front. If she wants to stay, she pays like any other tenant. Saturday, David's old college friend showed up at my door to apologize for believing Victoria's version of things, that David had been supporting me, when David had always talked proudly about how I'd built the house, managed the investments, taught him financial responsibility. A lot of David's friends made the same assumption, he admitted. Now we're wondering what else she misrepresented. By the following weekend, Victoria couldn't afford the rent and was moving out, and leaving her job at Premier Realty, mutually agreed upon, the same week. Do you feel bad about any of this? Margaret asked me. She chose cruelty over kindness, assumptions over questions. Now she's facing natural consequences. I didn't cost her that job. Her own clients did, because they lost confidence in her judgment. This isn't revenge. It's accountability. That Sunday in church, I thought about forgiveness and boundaries. Not opposites, but complements. I could forgive Victoria's assumptions and still expect her to face what they cost her. 3 weeks later, my doorbell rang. Victoria stood on my porch with a moving box. David's baby pictures, my late husband's recipe cards, small treasures that had ended up in the wrong hands. I invited her in. "It looks the same," she said, looking around the room she'd once planned to gut. "Some things don't need changing." She sat and finally said what she'd come to say. "I owe you more than an apology. I made assumptions about your life, your finances, your worth. I was cruel when I should have been grateful. Now I understand. David learned his kindness, his generosity, his quiet strength from someone. From you," I nodded. "You were a good mother. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy making assumptions. We all make assumptions, Victoria. The question is what we do when we learn we're wrong." She told me she'd found a job in Columbus, a fresh start. Before she left, she asked one last question. If she'd been respectful from the beginning, would things have gone differently? "Probably," I said. "I would have helped you find your feet. We might have found a way to honor David's memory together instead of fighting over it." Respect really isn't negotiable, is it? No, it's not. Thank you for teaching me that. After she left, I sat with the box a long while, thinking about the past 3 months, the funeral, the confrontation, the natural consequences. Victoria had learned an expensive lesson about assumptions and respect, but I'd learned something too. That quiet strength doesn't mean silent acceptance of disrespect. That boundaries aren't walls, they're guidelines. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let people deal with the consequences of their own choices. If you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your quiet nature, or your humble life, let me know in the comments. Quiet doesn't mean weak, it just means selective.